Welcome to FaithWorks Live.
Hey, it's that time again. FaithWorks Live. It is so good to be here to talk life. That's our heartbeat here on the show. Always has been, is to capture and promote and just revive. There's a good word. Revive. Look up the Latin on that one. Revive a vision for life across our homes and in our hearts first, because that's where it has to begin. In our hearts, in our homes, in our communities, in our country. And there's been no stronger voice for that very vision than our guest today, Maggie DeWitte, friend of the show. And she's with Pulse Life Advocates, and she's been in the game a long time. She's the expert on this topic, and we love to hear her encouraging voice to help guide our state, Iowans, in our passion for life, and to develop those strategies to help protect every single life here in our state and eventually in our nation as well. Iowa can be and should be a leader for life, and she's a leader that we look up to on that very topic. Maggie, it's always good to have you with us. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I always enjoy our time together and talking about all things life.
Absolutely. Well, and there's a lot to talk about, as usual. We've got an opportunity to stand for life. We have some news that I was hoping from the Supreme Court to hear a different verdict, and yet it's a little disappointing, gotta say, but it won't be the end of the story. My spidey senses tell me that there is more coming on this subject, but we talked at length over the last year or so on our show about this court case that went to the Supreme Court regarding abortion pills, medication so-called medication that's used to induce abortion in women, and how the FDA really wasn't very consistent in their standard. They were not promoting this based on health. There hadn't been enough research done to show, not to mention the damage that it's going to cause to a woman and of course to her baby if they're seeking to induce the end of the child's life. I would call that poison. Any medication that's given with the intent to end life, normally we call that poison. So pretty sure we shouldn't be just giving that around willy-nilly, and yet that's been the case. It's been easier and easier, it seems. Restrictions have been very lax about any of this. So that's what the court case had to do with, as a refresher. And we did get a verdict. It was not the one we were hoping for.
Right. It was a disappointment, to say the least. And, basically what the court said unanimously, I might add, which was kind of another kick in the gut, so to speak, was that basically the doctors who had filed the lawsuit against the FDA did not have standing to do so. So it wasn't necessarily about the merits of the case, in that, the sanctions and the regulations had been really weakened, and that there was damage that had caused by this pill, that there wasn't enough research done. I mean, none of those things they said were incorrect. None of the merits. It was basically the doctors didn't have standing. So it was more of a legal position that they took unanimously, again, versus the actual merits of the case. So, I'd like to think that they felt, at least the conservative ones, felt that there were merits and that they did agree with the doctors, and that, this is causing harm. But the fact that then they didn't do anything about it and they went by their legal standards versus what's morally right to do, that was kind of hard to take, because as we know, here in Iowa, 80% of our abortions are chemical. And that's what's leading, as we see more brick and mortar clinics shut down, that's what's happening. It's the chemical abortions, it's the mail order abortions, it's the telehealth, all of those kinds of more underground or, under the radar, that's happening more. And so it would have been really great to have seen that ruling come back to, well, it would have been great to eliminate this dangerous drug, but at least put them back to the state safety standards that we had originally had. Just simple things like you have to be seen by a doctor.
Yeah.
Right. The number of weeks that they're safe. I mean, they're never safe, but they had really gone beyond any of that and really just made it very watered down, which as a result, I mean, we did see women die from taking those pills, and we'll continue to see them die, not to mention, really significant health issues for the women that are taking it.
Well, and that's a struggle. I think people see these little pills as harmless. And that's been the line from Planned Parenthood and pro-abortionists. You see women now making these flippant videos, like just irreverent types of videos where they're doing a little dance and then they pop a pill in their mouth and they say, look, I just had an abortion, woohoo. And it's as horrible, as tragic, as disgusting, as, infuriating as that is, that's the message that they've been receiving over and over again. And that's kind of the way we are in society, just to broaden it. I mean, we see people saying, okay, well, we can just take a pill for that. We can have a medication for that. And it seems like it's no big deal. Only later do we hear about the side effects. Only later do we hear about the people whose lives were changed or lives were horribly ended, harmed by the quote unquote medication that they were given as a quick fix to their problem. And I think that's an ages old lie that the enemy has peddled to us for a long time, and with abortion is particularly insidious and sinister because we're talking about another human being's life, an innocent human being. And then that's what Planned Parenthood has always said, that we can fix the problem. We can make it go away. You don't have to worry about anything anymore. Just do this. This is it. This is the answer. And it's never the answer. It causes so much damage. Not the loss of life, obviously, is top of the list, but then you have the depression that can result, the regret that results, that women tend to engage in more and more life, I would say more life-threatening choices, harmful choices, whether that's promiscuity or drug use or anything like that, all the issues that come about with trying to suppress and repress the damage that abortion causes. And I've heard time and time again from women that have gone down this road, that have believed these lies, that have engaged in these things, and have sadly chosen abortion because they thought that that was the answer, and that was what was pushed to them. And there's no such thing as a harmless abortion. It is not normal. We just do it a lot. And that's the age-old thing where the enemy can convince you, oh, it's normal, it's no big deal. And then it's such a bad thing that you can't talk about it. It's such a bad thing that you have to be ashamed of it, that God couldn't forgive you for things like that. It's fascinating how fast that switches. And yes, there is forgiveness. There is freedom on the other side of abortion. If that's a part of your story and that's a part of your past, then Jesus does save. Jesus does heal and forgive. I want to make that crystal clear. But at the same time, we can be under no illusions about the harm that this is causing. And I think there are a lot of people, and correct me if I'm wrong, Maggie, but I hear it a lot in the stories that women tell me, that they believe that because it's legal, it's safe. That because, this is allowed, people do it. So they wouldn't allow this. The FDA, for example, we wouldn't have governing bodies that tell us that we can do this and that let doctors do this if there was any problem with it. So there's the illusion of safety because it's legal, or morality because it's legal. It must be okay because the law says we can do it. And once we've so abdicated the standard, like we've divorced the law from the lawgiver. So that's one big problem. And then every man does what's right in his own eyes. But when we stamp the approval of the law on it and say, yes, this is legal, people assume it's safe, it's good, it's okay for me to do. And that's one of the reasons we have to continue to fight this. And I know you feel the same way on the legal level, because it is about changing hearts and minds, but we also have to change those laws.
Well, and that's exactly right. It's a two-pronged process. I mean, I think we saw that with the reversal of Roe v. Wade. We had become complacent for 50 years of abortion law in our federal system. There was a complacency. There was what's legal. This is always the way it's going to be. It's accepted. It's been here for 50 years. It's precedent. And we need to have abortion. We have to have abortion in our society, in our culture, in order to give women, equality with men and all the lies that came with that. But it was the idea, again, well, it's legal, it must be okay. And same with the abortion pills. It's legal. It's given to me by a doctor or a physician or a nurse or some kind of medical professional, supposedly,
Yeah.
whom we also trust. You know, when you go to a doctor, you think, okay, they have a certain level of education and skills, and I should trust that they're going to give me something that is not going to harm me. But when you're looking at who and what industry is behind that,
Yeah.
and it's the abortion industry whose number one goal is to provide abortions and provide lots of them and get lots of money to do that, then you have to look at who's really in what best interest. Are they looking out for their own self-interest and their money, or are they really looking out for your health and well-being? And the other side of the coin is how many times have we heard women say, well, they call back to Planned Parenthood and say, you know, I'm having trouble, you know, I feel like I'm bleeding to death, or you know, I'm having this or that. And they say, well, just go to your ER, we can't help you. And then, oh, by the way, when you go to the ER, you don't need to tell them that you took an abortion pill.
Right.
You just tell them that you're having a miscarriage. So it also skews, they're, you know, purposely doing that because they know that that will skew any kind of reporting that we could have on the complications that are happening from women who take these pills and who are sold a bill of goods and a bill of lies that this is going to be safe, it's going to be a quick fix. They don't need to talk about it. It won't impact their health. It won't impact their spiritual or emotional or psychological well-being. And it's well after that they realize how devastated their life is as a result of that.
Yeah.
And the reality that they're seeing their unborn child.
Yeah. And just
in
the
their
side
bathroom.
right. Just the side effects that we know about. Just the women that have had horrible complications or have not had the care that they needed or have sadly lost their lives, because that does happen. And we know about a few of them. As you said, the cover up is big. The cover up is a big deal because Planned Parenthood doesn't want to mess with that. They don't want to be criminally liable. They don't want to face the consequences from what they're doing, because that not only, I mean, that's serious consequences, it also impacts the bottom line. And it continues to poke holes in the lies. So they continue to cover it up. And they have been willing, horribly so. There have been abortionists that have been willing to allow women to suffer and die because, I mean, all you have to do is look up some of the documentaries on places like Kermit Gosnell's House of Horrors. I do not, I hate to say I recommend that, but just to understand the depth of evil that we're talking about, these are people that are okay with making money, perpetrating crimes against men or against women and babies, and that don't seem to be bothered by all the harm that they cause, by the death that happens at their hands. And I'll just leave it at that, since this is a family show. Maggie, I'm going to turn our attention a little. So like I said, I think just to put a cap on that conversation, that was a disappointing Supreme Court verdict. But like you said, they didn't really rule against the merits of the case. It was about standing. So it was more of a legal procedural question. So that, in my mind, that means if there is a party with standing, for example, a state, if there's a state level, whether that's the attorney general of that state, heads up, Brenna Bird, if there's attorney general of that state, or if they have another party that would have legal standing, for example, like an association of doctors that has a higher, I don't know if that's a jurisdictional thing. I'm not the legal expert. I'm just saying if there is a party that does have standing, then they bring that case to the court. It's possible that the results would be different, that they would consider the question before them to be in an appropriate way so that they can dig deeper into the case and actually register a verdict on the merits. So that's a definite possibility in my mind. Yeah. We also, if we're turning our attention to our state, we're also awaiting a big ruling as well, that you are well versed on now for what, 5 years, 6 years? We've been talking about this in its various forms. And like all, Hollywood sequels, it's the plot's coming back around again. And we expect at any moment, really, to have the verdict released. It's already been, I'm not sure why they do this, why they prolong these things this way, but it's part of the tradition. So we're all waiting the verdict to be reported. for the Iowa Supreme Court on Iowa's heartbeat law. What are you hearing? What are your thoughts on that as we await this? I'm a horrible predictor of such events, so I just don't even engage in that anymore. I pray it up and let it go. But what are you hearing and what are you thinking as we await the verdict?
You know, I mean, a part of me is just like, we have got to put an end to this. We've waited since 2018. Just move forward and enforce this bill.
Right.
We've been, the people have spoken via our legislators twice now. Twice.
Mm-hmm.
And so that part of me is the part where it's like, we're due this. Like, this is our time here. We cannot drag this out anymore. But then you look at everything that you know that could happen with this and the possibilities of it going back to district court, or there, different nuances that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then I start to get a little frustrated. And so I am like you, I just pray about it. And I just pray God's timing is the timing now.
Mm-hmm.
That God's timing is our timing, please,
Yeah.
Lord.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we've waited so long and we've worked so hard to see this to come to fruition. I mean, that's the hope and that's the goal. And it will really send a clear message if we're able to finally see this come forward. And, I don't know anybody, I don't think anybody really has any insight one way or another. But the other piece of it is we're also sort of at a standstill, because with that ruling is also their final decision on how we move forward with abortion law in Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, they have not clearly articulated if they're going to continue in Iowa as they did on the federal level via Roe v. Wade with undue burden, which
Right.
basically means you can't have any kind of meaningful restriction against abortion. Or are they going to shift to a rational basis, which leaves the door open for us to continue to try and restrict abortion, kind of erode it a little by little. As we've always said, heartbeat isn't our end game.
Right.
It's a big step in the right direction. And if we get them to come forward with the rational basis, that opens the door for us then to continue to try and get some other meaningful restrictions and hopefully eliminate abortion altogether down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think given the trend of the court, that's what I find so interesting and why I don't want to be out there with a prediction, because I didn't know. I didn't predict that they would essentially reverse themselves within the span of just a couple of years, because that almost never happens. But that's sort of what gave the hope to all of us pro-lifers out here, which probably listening to the show this far, then that the Iowa Supreme Court reversed the previous decision to say, really, there isn't a constitutional right. This isn't written in the text. Somebody actually got a copy of the state constitution up in there, is what happened. And they opened their eyes and they read that. It's like, I've always thought that story about King Josiah in the days of the divided kingdom. And the way that it's written is so funny, because it's like the priests are looking around, they dusted off some old scrolls in the back and they're like, what is this? Oh yeah, it's the law of God. We should probably be take this to the king. Like, somebody should be reading this. This is a big deal. And he's like, where was this? Hiding in the back with the day old olive oil. Like, and suddenly it sparks basically a revival, because you actually read the law and you're like, oh yeah, we should probably do this. This is awesome.
Right.
And that's kind of what I picture in my mind. That's the comic book version of what happened at the Supreme Court. They actually read the Constitution. They're like, you know what? Abortion's not in here. And so we should be considering this. So suddenly all these questions are opened. And unfortunately, they didn't see the heartbeat law in that light the first time around. Now they're coming back to it. So I'm hoping that with fresh eyes, and they understand we can't just assume that because it restricts abortion that it's therefore unconstitutional, because that's been thrown out. That argument is untrue, it's old and it's tired and it's gone. And now we're not limited by that. So my prayer is that they can see this in the same light and understand that the state does have the authority to protect constitutional rights, chief among them being life. And that if we regulate this procedure that has as its goal the ending of life, which is a person's constitutional right, that the court can therefore say, yeah, the state absolutely has the authority because they're here to protect inerrant rights. And this is the big one. This is the foundational one. So that's my prayer, is to continue to see that. As of this discussion, obviously we don't really know, but I continue to call on everybody, pray along with me, that this court will uphold life, that we'll start to see a revival again. And it can start here, and it can start with us. Pray for the hearts of the justices, that if in the past maybe they've been hard-hearted in this area, that God can change hearts. God can change hearts of stone and make them hearts of flesh. If you're a Christian living right now listening to this, then you have a testimony to that effect. You know that God transforms and makes new creations. And so I pray that over the justices and that are about to make this key decision for our state. Like you said, Maggie, this isn't the end goal, but it would be an important step. It would be and it would be a landmark step, and everybody's eyes will be on Iowa again, like, oh, look, what just happened? So we have the ability to take a stand for life here. And so I pray that that is what happens. It will not come without cost, I'm sure, because it seems like we have a national government, again, as we turn our attention towards DC, that is intent on, and leadership that is intent on targeting pro-lifers. I don't know another way to put it. I am not generally a conspiracy theorist, even though my color is silver. I don't wear my tinfoil hat very often. And I just have so much evidence now when we see the FBI, we see SWAT teams beating down the doors of pro-lifers to accuse them of ridiculous crimes and take them away. When we see innocent people that are advocating for life, that are trying to blow the whistle on the horrible things that are happening in abortion clinics, and they're the ones that are charged with crimes, and they're the ones that are going to jail. And you see their pictures, and like, these are average everyday people. These are little old ladies. God bless them. These are, moms. These are dads, grandpas, people that all they want to do is peacefully pray and provide alternatives to women that are heading in towards abortion clinics. And they're the ones that are being targeted by the long arm of the American justice system. I mean, I don't know another thing. I can't imagine that any of our founders ever anticipated that such a thing would ever happen. Here we are. I don't say that to scare people, because I think we do need to be courageous in the face of that. It's shocking that that's where we are. But I think we should speak out against it. And I think we should be, like I said, we should still be willing to take a stand and just count the cost.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it goes back to your original argument too, of people who say, well, that's the law, I'm going to follow the law. Well, these people are criminals, so I guess they deserve to be punished. And it's the same idea but when you kind of peel back the layers and you look at what really happened with some of these people, then you're like, well, actually, that wasn't legal. Mm-hmm. That wasn't justice. That wasn't right at all. And they were being targeted and continue to be targeted and are put on, watch lists and terrorism lists and hate group lists. That is targeting against a group of people that has decided that we are not going to allow this to happen in our society anymore. And Roe v. Wade was the tip of the iceberg in terms of moving forward now to the individual states where the battleground is now happening. And we're not going to just end, Roe v. Wade is over, we're done. And so now we're seeing an unprecedented attack against our movement. And it started with the pregnancy resource centers and the good work that they were doing. Mm-hmm. Continued attacks, being vandalized and all the things that were happening to them, but then the continued narrative that they're fake clinics and that they don't provide real medical care. So we saw that. Now they're going after individual groups who are, in some cases, peacefully praying outside of abortion clinics, or trying to, just educate and pray, and are being targeted and are being thrown in jail and in prison. And I've never seen anything like it, and so we do have to have the resolve. We have to continue to move forward. We have to just immerse ourselves in prayer,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, that's because it is a spiritual attack that's happening. I mean, there's no other way to describe this whole movement. I've said it a million times, and I know you have too, but it is a spiritual battle.
Yeah.
And these are the darkness that we can only counter with light. And so, we have to immerse ourselves in prayer, and, just that is the foundation. And then from there, we have to educate. We have to understand that just because something is legal doesn't necessarily mean that it is right or it's morally right.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to dig deeper, because this current administration is doing everything they can to eliminate the rights that we have to speak up. And as citizens of the state and as this country, it is our right to do that. And they're trying to squelch that with whatever means possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need everybody to be praying and to be educating on what is really happening here.
Yeah. And I think it is a time for boldness, that it's not the time to shrink back in the face of this. Just understand what it is that we're up against would be good. But ultimately, again, since we're on the Old Testament kick today, they who are with us are far greater than those who are with them. And I ask God to give us eyes to see the spiritual realities, the spiritual forces at play here. And I mean, it's shocking to me that it's happening and that people consider it to be normal. And we don't even hear the news stories all that much anymore. It's just like, okay, so-and-so got sent to jail. Next headline, next topic. But this is groundbreaking. It really is, because that means that any and every one of us that would be on those lists, quote unquote, could be targeted by exactly the same evidence. And it's not something that we should stand for in America, but if that's the way that this is going to happen, then we must obey God rather than men. And I just think we got to armor up and we got to move forward. Like you said, our battle belongs to the Lord. And that doesn't mean that we still have to fight it. We still have to move forward and continue, but we do so differently. We do so in love.
Right.
We do so without bitterness. We do so praying for our enemies or those who think they're our enemies. And we continue to share the love and the truth and the beauty of life. There are some great ways that we can do that are coming up as well, Maggie. And I'd love for you to tell us about that. We've got the March for Life that's coming up, which is an incredibly positive experience. I know there's people there might be a little bit scared. Like, well, what happens if I do? I'm like, you're going to have a great time. That's what happens. You come on up to the Capitol. It's always fun. Tell us how people can get involved with that. We got to mark our calendars.
Yeah, so it's coming up this coming Saturday, June 22nd. It'll be our second annual Iowa March for Life. As we stated, with the fall of Roe via the Dobbs case, abortion law comes back to the states. And so we felt as a movement, we really needed to do some kind of commemoration and celebration of that federal abortion law going away. And so this is our second annual March for Life. We are going to start at the Capitol at downtown Des Moines on the second floor in the Rotunda. And starting at noon, we'll have some praise and worship music, and we'll have educational booths. I think we've got somewhere between 15 and 17 different organizations from across the state of Iowa that are going to have information about the great work that they're doing here in the state. So you have an opportunity to network and gather information. And then our rally will start at 1 o'clock. And you'll hear from pro-life speakers, Attorney General Brenna Bird, some legislators, some other great folks around the state. And then at 1:45, we'll go outside and we'll march around the Capitol over to the Supreme Court and back over, and we'll have some light refreshments after. So it's really a great opportunity to get out there, to be bold, like you said, to let your voice be heard and bear witness that this is an important issue. We might have the heartbeat rolling this week. I don't know. I mean, June is running out already, so it's either got to be this Friday or the coming up Friday. So maybe Attorney General Brenna Bird will have good news for us at the rally. That's our hope. But, we want to pray. We want to be bold. We want to let our voices be heard. And it's just an excellent way for you to be connected and to realize that you are not alone in this movement. There are a lot of people throughout the state of Iowa that care very much about this issue. They're very passionate about this issue and want to be connected with all of the great groups that are doing fantastic work here in Iowa on the life issue.
Yeah, it's a great way to go, to be encouraged, to take a stand, to find like-minded people and organizations. Like, I've been doing this a while, and I still find new groups, new, partners in other parts of the state I didn't know about. So we get to pray and we get to hang out. I get to hear cool stories, life-affirming stories. It's amazing. There's always great testimonies that come out of that, and people that, again, reaffirm why we do what we do. It's not just about a proposition on a piece of paper. That's not what this is. This is about every single heartbeat. It's every single human made in the image of God that is here for a reason and a purpose to display that unique glory to each and every one of us. And I think if that is the driving force behind it, it doesn't really matter what we're up against. It doesn't matter what the other side tries to throw at you, because ultimately life wins. God is the author of life. He put you here for a purpose, and me, to uniquely display his glory. And if every single law in our country reflected that, that's what we're asking. That's the goal, so that we can live that abundant life that we were put here to live. And as you said, this is such a spiritual battle. I think we have to see it with those eyes, but we have to see it with a spirit of victory. We can combat the darkness, because no matter what, even though the darkness tries to overcome the light, it never can. Darkness, it's already defeated. Life wins. Christ has the victory ultimately, and now we're just playing it out. We're just playing it out towards a very good, very happy ending. Maggie, it's always encouraging to talk with you. Thanks so much for your time today. Thanks for your continued fighting every single day. Appreciate your boldness, your strength, your courageous spirits, and willingness to pick up the phone when I call. Also,
yes. Well, thank you for all you do and giving all of us this platform to speak on life, because we're not welcome in a lot of places.
Yeah.
So to be welcomed and to have this opportunity is a godsend. So thank you.
As long as I have a microphone, you got the red carpet, Maggie. I'll just make that promise now. And let's end with our verse of the day from Psalm 139. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and my soul knoweth it right well. Think about it that way. I mean, it's a little uncomfortable for some of us who aren't good with compliments, but to recognize that you are God's handiwork, created before the foundation of the world for his purposes, for his glory in you. And that's also true for each and every person you're going to see today, and the new little babies that are going to be born today and tomorrow, and the folks that are going to go home and meet their maker today. Like, from the beginning to the end, it's so beautiful. We have a new baby in our congregation, and we can't wait to meet her. She's so super new, and we're super excited. And to see the excitement in her family and her, it's there's nothing more beautiful. And I always kind of react with puzzlement that the enemy looks at that and says, no, we got to get rid of that. I'm like, well, I guess it kind of makes sense, because you don't see God any more clearly than the beauty of his creation and the new life in the cries and smiles of a newborn baby, and the family and love that surrounds that child. Like, that is it's the image of God. It's the joy of the Father's heart. And so that's what we can move forward with. That's what we can embody. And that will be I think our most powerful weapon against the darkness that tries to form around us, is rejoicing in the joy of the Lord, in the goodness of his presence, in the beauty of his creation. That's you and me. So let's move forward in that today. Let's celebrate life. I'll see you on Saturday at the March for Life at the Capitol. See you there. Maggie DeWitte, our special guest from Pulse Life Advocates. I'll link to more details about that, just in case you need a reminder, which we all do. So link to the event details down below. And until next time, we have a mission to love God, to serve people, and to live free.